Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the Chicago Transit Authority Virtual Job Fair event. I would like to introduce you to Lindsay. Lindsay will tell you about her company, job openings, and how to apply for those openings. Lindsay?
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm very excited to be here today. My name is Lindsay Stupinian. I'm from the Chicago Transit Authority. I am the manager for outreach and engagement here at the CTA. Daniel, do you want me to go ahead and launch into the presentation, or were there a couple other folks who you wanted to speak first?
I do believe Pat was going to give a brief introduction. My apologies, Pat.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pat Moore, and I'm a business relations specialist with the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. We are the largest public workforce system in the nation, and we serve residents such as yourself of Chicago and the Chicagoland area and all of Cook County. We are the largest workforce system in the nation, and we look forward to working with our employer partners. We have our TDL Sector Center on the line as well, who's managed by the YWCA. And I want to also thank the people over at Daniel and David over at SIU who manage this process. And we just hope that you will learn as much as you can about the offerings that CTA has and take advantage of that. Thank you so much for participating, and I'll turn it over to Lindsay.
All right, so we can go ahead and get started, really get into the meat of this presentation. Daniel, you can go ahead and advance. So at the Chicago Transit Authority, our mission is to deliver quality, affordable transit services that link people, jobs, and communities. Now, this mission means something a little bit different to everybody who works here, but for me personally, it really underscores the fact that the CTA is the lifeblood of Chicago. We really make sure that Chicagoans get to work, that they get to their doctor's appointments, that they get to school, and when we're not in a pandemic, that they get to take advantage of all the fun things our city has to offer as well. So without the CTA, Chicago would look totally different. The way we live and move around the city would look different as well. And so I always just like to really underscore the importance of what we do, the service that we provide to the city that we live in. Next. So at CTA, we have approximately 11,000 total employees. I think that number wowed me when I first came to CTA, the fact that we have so many people on the ground in the office providing these services. We have a mix of both union employees and non-union employees. So union employees would be folks like our mechanics, our tradespeople. Non-union jobs are more like administration, people like myself. I work in human resources, people in safety, technology, and other more behind the scenes roles like that. So it's really interesting to work for an organization that has kind of that mix of both union and non-union. We do provide service to Chicago and 35 area suburbs, and we do that through approximately 130 bus routes and our 8 rail lines. Another thing a lot of people I think don't realize about the CTA is that we have locations all over the city. So our headquarters is in downtown. It's at 567 West Lake Street. We have 7 bus garages spread throughout the city, 9 rail terminals throughout the city, and then a handful of other locations and buildings that also serve specific functions that make the CTA run. So that's just one of the fun facts that I think a lot of people are aware of when they think of CTA. Your location where you would be working out of is always going to depend on the job that you apply and ultimately are hired for, and then also the manpower needs for each of the different locations. Next. So we'll start to dive in a little bit to the CTA careers. We have 6 different lines of business at CTA, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about each of those. But we have a lot of opportunities there. I think if you take a look at our jobs page, which I'll get to in a few slides, you'll see a wide variety of jobs that are available, which again, I think is something that really surprises people. So let's go ahead and talk about some of those opportunities. So our first line of business that it's probably our most visible, or definitely is our most visible line of business, is operations. So within operations, we have bus operations and rail operations. And basically, these are the people that you see on the front line. They are your bus operators, your rail operators, your customer service assistants, the people who are in the booths at each of our rail stations, helping people with their Ventra card or get directions to where they need to go. So they're probably the people that you think of when you think of CTA. We have a really large maintenance department as well, which services our rail and bus maintenance sides and also our facilities. They are making sure that all of our vehicles are maintained and repaired, that all of our systems are working as they should be, and to make sure they are keeping our vehicles as safe as possible. Safety is a huge theme of what we do here at CTA. It's our #1 priority. And so in everything we do, and this goes into really all of the jobs that we have, all of our departments, but definitely on the rail side, it's a huge, huge part of what we do, making sure our vehicles are safe to get our passengers from point A to point B, whatever it might be for them. Our infrastructure department consists of power and way, construction, and engineering. So this, I like to think of this as the structures that kind of are beneath all of the rail cars that we have. So the tracks, the supports, they are making sure that the infrastructure is there to support our vehicles as they're moving our passengers from place to place. So some of the jobs within these groups include things like our track workers, people who are actually out there repairing the tracks. Our flaggers, so those are people who, when that maintenance on the tracks is being done, they are making sure any approaching train is stopping when they need to. They're kind of the person literally out there with the flags, directing traffic and making sure our workers, our passengers, everybody safe and everything is going as smoothly as possible. Next. So some of the other fields that I think it's always a surprise when we talk about having some of these at the CTA, law. We have a large legal department and they specialize in things like labor and employment contracts. We have a technology department. So you think about CTA, think about being on a bus. You hear the loudspeakers, you see the lights flashing. Clearly there's other technology systems that make the engines work. That they have different metrics and different analytics that they're running all the time, telling us what things are working and what things aren't. So that requires a huge technology team to support the technology on our vehicles and also throughout the authority. The gentleman you see at the photo, in the photo on this slide, is at our control center, which I always love because I think it looks like NASA when they launch a rocket, and you see the people behind all the screens and they're watching. We have a similar setup at CTA where we are watching the systems. We're watching through our technology systems. We're watching what's happening in our rail stations and on our vehicles. So just making sure, again, everything's moving safely and efficiently. On the administration side, we also have things like finance, HR, communications, and safety. So again, groups that are behind the scenes, making sure everything is running, that contracts are getting paid, that human resources, we're hiring people, communications, that if we need to send out a press release, we're getting that out and it's addressing the whatever we want to talk about. So there's a lot that is happening at CTA. And again, with 10 to 11,000 jobs, you can imagine it's more than everybody being a bus operator. It's more than everybody being a mechanic. There is a wide variety of job opportunities here. Next. So 2 of the featured careers that we always like to talk about, because these are roles that we are pretty much always hiring for, include our bus operators. So the people who are operating our buses over their established route and according to an established schedule. So again, people who are at the front of the bus, driving it, helping passengers in and off, or get on and off, addressing any issues that people might be having. So they're the people who are operating your buses. Those folks, the starting salary for that job is $23.44 an hour. And people in that position start off as part-time, but then they can transition to full-time after about a year and a half. It fluctuates a little bit from moment to moment, but that's typically where we're at. About 18 months into that job, you can transition to full-time. Part-time for us means 32 hours, working up to 32 hours a week. So you're still getting a lot of hours. And one of the great features of this job is that even though it's part-time, we offer medical benefits. Again, safety and health and wellness being really important for us, we want to make sure that we are offering that to all of our employees at CTA, regardless of being part-time or full-time. One of the other roles that we are always recruiting for is a bus mechanic role. So again, these are the people who are performing that comprehensive maintenance and repair on our CTA buses. The starting salary for this job is $29.82 an hour. This is a full-time job and it comes with full-time benefits. And one of the things I like to point out with this job is that this starting salary is far higher than the average rate in Chicago. I think when you do the math for full-time, the approximate salary for somebody who's starting as a bus mechanic at CTA is about $60,000 or a little bit above. The average in Chicago is about $45,000. So it just goes to show that we pay really well. We offer great benefits. And for bus mechanics, you get 5 months of paid training. They pay for your toolbox. So there's some awesome benefits for people who are interested in this role. Next. So all of our positions are going to be found on our careers website, transitchicago.com/careers. You can take a look today. I actually have the list pulled up as well. I have another screen. So there's a lot of opportunities right now that you can apply for. One of the great things that I think we do on our career page that not a lot of companies do is we list the salary. That was really surprising to me, actually, when I came on to CTA about a year and a half ago. Most places don't, and I don't know why. I've never understood that. But at CTA, you know exactly what you're going to get, or you at least know the range. So you could take a look at that if you're considering a new job, transitioning, and say, hey, is it going to be worth it for me to try to hop over to doing something at CTA? So that's something that I always just like to emphasize. So again, you can see all of our open jobs there. We also have a page where we tell you what our upcoming jobs are. So these are jobs that you can't necessarily apply to today, but they are jobs that we are anticipating you should be able to apply for in the future. So basically the reason we post those is that we want to give people a heads up. If there's a job that you're looking for, let's say rail car repairer, you know that you're interested in that job and it's not open. Maybe you check our upcoming jobs page and you say, hey, I see that's on the website. I see that's on the upcoming jobs page. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye out and see when that does become available so I can apply for it right away. So I can kind of start thinking about how I would put my application together, what things I might emphasize on our resume. So we just want to let our public know what things we are anticipating so that if they are interested in those jobs, they can kind of keep an eye on things. Next. So I'll talk a little bit about our hiring process now. So for our hiring process, once you apply to a job and you're chosen to move forward in the job, in the selection process, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get through our hiring process. Now, this is going to be a little bit different for every job, every person, because there are going to be different steps associated with each job. Some jobs require more steps, some require fewer. And so it's really just going to depend on the steps and then also how you are responding to those things. So when you apply for a CTA job, you will be taken to a profile or you'll complete a profile and you'll be taken to a page where you can then check on the status of the different jobs you've applied to. We will always let you know what your next steps are. So it's really depending on how fast you are responding to the requests. Those requests will be made through that status page, but you'll also receive them through email. So keeping an eye on your email, make sure you're using an email address that is active and that you do from time to time check your spam email because sometimes things go in our junk. We don't want them to, but they go there anyway. And so keeping an eye on that will put you in the best position to see those alerts when they come up and be able to respond to them quickly. Next. So applying to CTA jobs, there's a couple different steps. So again, the first is to visit our career site, check out the list of options, see what you might be interested in. The second step after that is filling out a profile. And so you will fill out one profile for all the jobs that you want to apply to. So you'll only have to do that one time. You'll basically put in, your demographic information, where you live, a brief work history of jobs you've held in the past, education, things like that. So once you filled out that profile, you're set. You don't ever have to do it again for CTA. After you fill out that profile, your next step is to submit an individual application for an individual job. So one profile, but you can't just send it out to all of the jobs that we are posting. You do have to still apply for the individual jobs. So that's kind of step two is after filling out a profile is then filling out the individual application for those individual jobs. One thing that we always like to encourage our applicants to do is to submit a resume with your job application. Some jobs do not require this. Some do, some do not. Even for the jobs that do not, we recommend sending it because it really shows us, it shows our recruiters, our people who are reviewing those applications, that you care about this job, that you have taken the time to think through this job and how your skill set is compatible with the job requirements in the job description that we're asking for. So highly, highly recommend for you to submit a resume, even if it's not required for that particular job application. Next. So some things that we like to encourage our applicants to think through as they are considering, am I qualified for this job? Should I apply for this job? These are some questions that will really help you assess whether this is going to be a good fit, and then will also help our recruiters on the back end as well. So do you qualify for the job? Do you have the necessary years of experience or any certifications that we're saying you must have in order to be considered for this job? Is your resume current? So again, we encourage you to submit one and to submit a current one. If you've applied to a CTA job in the past and you submitted a resume, make sure you take a look at that to see if it needs to be updated. Have you, gotten an extra certification? Have you actually worked somewhere else since the last time you applied to CTA and need to make sure you include that work history? So making sure that's current. And then it also speaks to the job that you're applying for. So one piece of advice that I always like to give applicants is to look at the job description and use some of the keywords in that job description when you are tailoring your resume to the job. It makes our recruiter's job a lot easier if we have a job that says customer service experience is required, and on somebody's resume, it says customer service in XYZ. That's a really, really easy thing for us to see and make the connection on. So highly recommend you using some of those keywords. And then finally, if the role requires a driver's license, like many of our jobs do, like including bus operator and bus mechanic, which I mentioned before, making sure you have that license, that it's up to date, and that especially for bus operator, you would have a good driving record. We want to make sure that we are putting safe drivers on the road, and so that's going to be an important part of the application process as well. Next. So testing is the next step for many of our jobs. It's not required for all of our jobs. So for example, again, I work in human resources. I didn't have to do any kind of testing for my job. However, people on the operations side or on the trades, the maintenance side, they might have to take some tests, or in fact, they will have to take some tests. So again, testing is just another step in the process, and how quickly you respond to the request to test will kind of determine how long your process takes in the long run, or how fast you can move to the next step. So we offer some different types of tests, again, associated with the various jobs. So one of them is a written or online knowledge-based test. This is something that our bus operators will take, and it's really just focused on general knowledge, customer service. Then we also have skills-based or practical tests that some of our, again, trades and mechanic positions will take. We just want to make sure that they know how to work with the equipment that we will be introducing them to, that they at least have some kind of baseline knowledge on things like taking a piece or a part of an engine apart, putting it back together, things of that nature, so that we know that they have, again, at least that baseline knowledge. Testing occurs at different stages of the application process, depending on the job. And then test scores, there are some policies around our testing scores. So if you test for one of our jobs and you pass, that score is good for 3 years. And so let's say you decide not to move forward after you pass the test, that's okay. You can apply for that same job like in 2 years. You wouldn't have to retest if you already passed it. If you fail a test at CTA, that's not the end of your CTA journey necessarily. You just have to wait 1 more year before you can reapply to that job and retake the test. So there are some things that it's set in place. We do have some policies around that, but it's not the end of the road for you. Next. So the next stage of the hiring process is going to be interviews. We do phone and video interviews, 2 rounds of interviews for a lot of our jobs. Many of our jobs just require 1 round of video interviews. So again, it just always depends on the job and the different requirements. But typically these interviews rather, are with an HR representative and a department manager. They last for about 30 to 40 minutes, again, depending on what kind of interview it is. And then we really focus on things like your work history, your education and skills, and your previous work experience when we are in these interviews wanting to learn more about you. Next. Some interview tips that we like to encourage our applicants with are to, again, review the job description before your interview and think through how you meet those different requirements. I always like to take the different requirements of a job description, kind of rephrase them in the form of the question, and then actually practice answering them. That's a good strategy that works for me. Making sure you're logging in early to test your technology connection. We're doing all of our interviews right now through phone and then video or Zoom call, like we're on a Zoom call right now. So there's nothing more frustrating than joining a meeting or an interview, right when you're supposed to, and you have a bad connection, your audio or your video is not working. So logging in a few minutes early to make sure that that is working well is going to really set you up for success for the rest of the interview. Making sure you interview in a quiet place with minimal distractions, also going to be really important for this Zoom environment that we're in. You don't want things going on in the background or additional noises that's distracting for both you and the interviewers. Wearing appropriate interview clothing, at least from the waist up. Presenting yourself in a polite and professional way. And then finally, providing answers about what you have done and demonstrating your experience based on what you've done in the past. So it's really easy for all of us to think in hypotheticals. And if we're presented with a situation, say, well, this is what I would do, but we are more interested in what you have done. So we want you to reflect on your experience and tell us how you responded to the situation we present. If you responded poorly in the past, that's okay. Tell us what you learned and how you would correct it in the future. But we always want to know, we always want you to be drawing on your experience because that will indicate for us how you would respond to similar situations at the CTA. Next. So pre-employment. So after, let's say you get through the interview process, all the testing, everything, and we say, great, you're the person for this job. We want to hire you. So we'll give you your offer letter. We'll set a start date, and then we'll have you go through some pre-employment checks or pre-employment steps rather. Those include a background check, medical, drug, and physical testing, and then for some jobs, employment and education verification. So we just need to make sure that everything you've told us on the front end checks out. One thing that we often get questions about is on the background check. One of the best things that we can say is that even if you have some kind of history, you have some kind of criminal history in your background, we really encourage you to still apply for the jobs that you're interested in, because we do look at the whole application. We look at your experience, we look at your interview, we look at your tests. So even if you've got something in your background, that should not make you not want to apply for a job at CTA. But it's really important that you're honest about those things up front, because if you don't disclose something on the front end and then we find it on the back end, that's not going to look well. That's not going to look good for you. So disclose everything up front is really the best piece of advice we can give. And again, don't let that discourage you from applying for a job at CTA. Next. So let's say you pass all the background checks, everything checks out, everything's great. Then you get to become part of the CTA family. And when I say family, I really mean it. People love working at CTA. It is great. People are very supportive, very kind, really willing to help each other out. And I'm so sorry, I'm realizing I'm up on time. So I'm gonna go through these really fast. We offer great medical benefits, free transit on CTA and PACE, a lot of support for people when they're learning and growing in their jobs, and a great also employee only access to special events. So go ahead, go to the next slide. I'm so sorry that I'm going over on time. Follow us on LinkedIn. This is where we show all of our jobs. This is where we introduce you to company culture. This is the best way to keep up with us. So if you haven't created a LinkedIn profile before, please do that. Follow us and you'll get to see all the things that we're putting out there. Okay, I think we've got a little bit of time for questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Daniel.
Thank you so much for that wonderful, thorough, and insightful presentation, Lindsay. No worries on the time. You know, we recognize that this is a wonderful opportunity for a lot of folks who are on the call, so we want to be sure that all of your questions get answered. So I do kind of want to give you an overview of, you know, how that Q&A process is going to work for the job seekers on the call. If you do have any questions for Lindsay, as we've already been prompting you in the chat, please feel free to enter those questions into the chat. I'll pose those directly to Lindsay and she'll answer them for you. So again, you have a prime opportunity to get questions that you have answered directly from an employer rep. Please take advantage of that opportunity. We'll get those questions answered for you as soon as possible. Lindsay, the first question that I do have here, this individual asked, does a bus operator require a CDL?
That is a really good question. So you do not have to have a CDL in order to apply for the job at CTA. So you don't even have to have the learner's permit. If you go on our website today, that job is posted on it. You can start the application, you can get through testing, you can basically get all the way up to where we give you your offer letter. However, before you start your job, before you set foot on CTA property, you have to get at least your commercial learner's permit. So just like when you get your driver's license, you got a learner's permit for that. Same thing for CDL. And so you'll do that at the Secretary of State, the local DMV. There's a couple different locations you can go to get that. Once you get that CLP, you can start your job, and then we will provide the training that will help you get your CDL. So we will help you get that along the process. If you do already have your CDL, that's great. You're already one step ahead, but it's not required for that bus operator position when you apply.
Fantastic. Thank you for that response, Lindsay. Next question that I have in the chat, this individual asks, is there a job description for people that work in the control center? How often do they have job openings? I have previous experience as an aircraft dispatcher, and I feel it's a direct transfer of skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Control Center, they do a lot of hiring from within because they do want people to be familiar with the systems already. There are from time to time positions that are available on the website. I can't give you exactly how often because it really depends on department turnover. And so the best thing I could encourage you to do is go onto our website and create a profile on through our careers page. You can indicate that you're interested in jobs in the Career Center, and that they will send you updates when those become available. And same thing for other career fields or other jobs. That's another way that you can kind of stay up to date on things that we're offering, even if it's not available right at this moment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay. And then another kind of CDL focused question. It's a little bit more technical, so not sure if you'll have you know, a response or not, but this individual asks, I already have a Class B CDL license with air brake and passenger endorsement. Will further CDL training be required or standard operations training?
No, actually, that's a good question. Yes, Class B is what we do require with those, with the knowledge, with the air brakes and the passenger endorsement. So it sounds like you're actually in great shape to apply and to hopefully become one of our bus operators.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay. Next question that I have, this individual says, I've applied to several opportunities within CTA and have not gotten any feedback. If you have a profile and an opportunity that fits your background opens, will you still be considered, or does the process start over with every new opening?
So also a good question. So it really just depends on the job. So for example, I'm just looking at our jobs page right now. Let's say the top one that I see right now is compliance clerk. So let's say like you applied for compliance clerk and you didn't get an interview for that one. You would have to apply again in the future if that job came up again. For jobs like bus operator or bus mechanic, jobs that we do like have open for a good chunk of time, you might apply for that and not hear from us for a little while. It's because we do get a lot of applications for those jobs. And so it takes us a little bit of time to sort through them. So again, it just depends on how long, when was the last time you applied for this job. But let's say you apply for the bus operator today. And then, you don't get an interview for that. And you see that in a couple months, that job is no longer open. It's no longer on our careers page. But then a week later, you go back and check again and, oh, bus operator is actually back on the jobs page. You would have to reapply for that rec. So it's kind of confusing. The best thing I could tell you is just to, if it says that the job is active, it's still, people are still being considered for it. If it's no longer active, then you would have to reapply for that job again when you see it up on the website again. So that's a little confusing. I apologize, but it's currently our policy.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Next question that I have, this individual asks, I've done an application, received an email about the test, recently took the test and failed, unfortunately. Is there any way that I can retake the test?
Yeah, absolutely. You do have to wait 1 year though. So you'll have to wait 1 year before you can retake that test. So that's the reality. So, put a calendar update on your calendar, a reminder to encourage you to apply for the job again this time next year if it's something that's available. Again, like bus operator and bus mechanic, those are jobs that are frequently being posted for. But yeah, you do have to wait that 1 year.
Awesome, thank you, Lindsay. Next question that I do have in the chat, this individual asks, if you have completed steps requested, how long does it take for a start date?
So again, it's between typically 4 to 6 weeks. If you apply for the job and then you're chosen to move forward in the process, 4 to 6 weeks is usually about how long it takes for somebody to get through all of our steps. That might be delayed, based on some testing, or if there's a delay with like background checks or something like that. I believe, since we've been in the pandemic, we do rely on some outside vendors for certain things like a physical, so our drug testing. So if they're backed up a little bit, then that also affects our process. But typically, on average, 4 to 6 weeks is what we tell our applicants.
Awesome, thank you, Lindsay. And the next question that I do have isn't directly for Lindsay, but it is something I would like to provide some clarification on. To the individual, who asked, will you be pulling our information at the end to pull our application later? Just an FYI, folks from the YWCA TDL sector will be reaching out to you directly after this job fair to follow up with potential opportunities on any of the applications that you want to make. So just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that. And Lindsay, kind of circling back, we do have some additional questions. This individual asks, what if we don't have any experience in what we are applying for? Will that lower our chance of being chosen for the position?
I think the best thing that you can do in that situation is, again, look at those job requirements. Sometimes when we look at job requirements, we think, oh, I don't have skills in exactly that field or exactly that thing. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of reflection, thinking about past jobs you've had or educational experiences, internships, whatever it might be, thinking about your past experience and how you might actually meet that requirement, or you might have done something similar, and using your resume as an opportunity to expand on that. And so again, I'm going to use the example of customer service. Customer service is an important part of our customer service assistant role for sure, because it's in the name. And also our bus operator role, again, because they're dealing with the public. You might not have customer service experience in your title, right, in past jobs, but like, did you ever work in a restaurant? Have you been a bank teller? So there's a ton of different opportunities, a ton of skills that you might actually have that might not come to your head or come to the forefront of your mind immediately. So it might take a little bit of time to think about those. Not ever, of course, like lying about anything or saying you have this experience when you don't, but just really thinking through your past experience and then bringing in others who can help you kind of think through those things. So any folks, through TDL, through any other organizations you might be connected with, who can help you with things like resume workshops, or even interviewing workshops when it gets to that stage. So those people, surrounding yourself with people who can actually really support you and help you think through those different things that you actually do have experience in, is going to be one of my best pieces of advice.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. The next question that I have for you, this individual asks, for positions other than bus or train operators, do you have a mandatory retirement age?
Nope.
Fantastic.
I can go further, but I think that answers it.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. Next
Actually,
question.
I will say one thing. We do not have a mandatory retirement age. And what's really cool, a really cool part of my job is that I actually get to connect a lot with some of our retirees, because I do some other things besides just presenting. And some of our retirees have been here for 30, 40, 50 years. And they love working at CTA. They've had a really fulfilling career. So it's really, really cool to see people who have really been in it for the long haul, and just really have devoted a lot of their time, and they are retiring with pension and great benefits.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay. And then another question that I have for you, and I think you can kind of give an abbreviated version of it, but this individual asks, how can I become a train conductor?
So that's a job that actually you have to, you do have to kind of rise from the entry-level jobs into. So you're never going to see train operator, rail operator listed on our career page. Usually people come in as a customer service assistant or a flagger. And so those are some of the jobs that you get to know the rail system. You get to know the different roles and the different functions of those roles, because once you get to being an operator, you got to have that background knowledge. So it's kind of like you're in that job and you're doing the role like CSA or flagger, but you're also learning the system. And so it does kind of provide the next level that you can then jump to if that's what you're interested in. So there are a couple steps that you would have to take internally before you could become a rail operator.
Understood. Thank you for that information, Lindsay. Next question that I have for you is, are full benefits offered to part-time employees?
So some are. So again, I mentioned part-time bus operators, but this would apply to any part-time employees that we offer medical benefits. So again, that's a great benefit that you won't find in a lot of part-time work, but that is something that we offer to our part-time employees at CTA. Same thing with free access to CTA and PACE buses.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. Next question that I have is, do you have to have any experience to become a construction worker?
Yes. That one is a little tricky for me to answer, because the hiring for a construction is kind of done through another partner that we have. They do want some experience, and so that's basically all I'm going to be able to confidently answer.
Understood. Thank you for that, Lindsay. Next question that I have, this individual asks, how can one become a quality technician in the workshop environment? Not sure if that's something you would be able to answer or not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a little too specific. As much as I would love to be able to answer all the questions about all the individual roles, with having 11,000 of them, I just can't. I can't get into the details of all of them.
Completely understand. Thank you for that, Lindsay. Next question that I have here is, would DUI be a disqualifying factor for any of the jobs that you covered here today?
That's a good question too. So again, I kind of talked about this when I talked about the pre-employment. When we see that, we do look at that as part of your background information, but we would look at, the severity, any of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when it happened, anything that you had to do, to remedy the situation, any, I don't know, gosh, I'm like totally blanking on the words, but yeah, anything you had to do kind of in response to that, making sure that you would do all the things, pay any fees, things like that to reconcile that situation. But again, we would look at that in addition to all the other things, in addition to your test, in addition to your interview. So it should not disqualify you from applying to a job.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. Another good question in the chat. This individual asks, how do you work with college students on a part-time or full-time capacity?
So we do have a lot of internship opportunities at CTA. And so I think that is probably the most likely way that most of our college students would be involved with CTA. We have a lot of internship opportunities. And in fact, let me see, I know that they were just posting, they had a ton of them posted recently. Do a quick search. Yeah, so that's probably one of the best ways is to go on our career site. It's at the same place. The link that's on the slide in front of you, transitchicago.com/careers. That will list all of our internships as well. So go ahead and check out some of those. And that's how most of our college students do join us.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And then another question here that I'll kind of translate into a broader, more generalized question. This individual asks, do you guys hire at 19? We'll translate that into a more general question. Is there a minimum hiring age for any of the jobs that you covered here today that you're aware of?
Some of our jobs do have a minimum hiring age of 21, but I know we also did just change the minimum age for some of our other jobs to 18. So it used to be 21 across the board. Now some of them are 18. So that would just say on those individual job postings if 21 is a requirement.
Understood. Thank you, Lindsay. Next question that I have, this individual asked, I passed the test. How do I know if it is still good? I don't know if that's something that you could answer.
Yeah, so if you pass the test, like I said, it's good for 3 years. So if it's, if it's 3 years and 1 day since you passed, then you would have to, apply to the job and pass the test again. If it's 2 years and 364 days, you're good for 1 more day. So 3 years is our cutoff.
Understood. Thank you for that, Lindsay. Next question that I have, this individual asks, if I've applied and been sent an invite for testing, but received the email late, would I have to submit another application?
That's a good question to send to the CTA careers at transitchicago.com. So the email that is on the slide in front of you, they'll be able to tell you if there's a little bit of leeway with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And I know we've gotten an additional question in the chat that was covered a little bit earlier. And again, this one isn't necessarily for Lindsay, but for the folks who are still on the call, the YWCA TDL Sector Center will be following up with all the folks who are on the call here. For any questions that you have regarding your application, they're going to walk you through that process and give you any additional assistance that you need. So I just want to make sure that that's abundantly clear and the folks who are on the call are aware of that. Another good question here that I'm seeing, Lindsay, this individual asks, I'm moving back to Chicago in a few weeks. Do I have to be a Chicago resident to be considered for any position for the CTA?
So yes, for some of our jobs. So for some of our jobs, most of our exempt or non-union jobs, you do have to be living in the city, within the city limits of Chicago, within 6 months after your hire date. So I know for me, when I live in the city, but I actually remember being asked as part of my interview, like, do you live in Chicago or do you plan to move here in the next 6 months? My answer was yes already because I lived here, but that is the intention. Since it's a city job, they want you to be living in the city limits. Some of our union jobs do not have that requirement. So it kind of depends on the job that we're talking about. But in general, a lot of them do require you to live within city limits of Chicago.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. Another great question that we got in the chat. Do you have a veteran/disability hiring initiative?
So we don't do veteran preference, but what we do is we try to help our veterans who are looking for a job at CTA know what might be a good fit for them at CTA. And so we do have this a veteran. It's called the Military Occupational Classification table, I guess. It's on our website. You can just search veterans in the CTA website, and it'll pull up the page related to our veterans, and it'll give you this list. And so basically it tells you what your military classification code in the military was and what it could translate to here at CTA. Now, it's not a finite list. You might, there might be a ton of jobs that you are eligible to apply for at the CTA that this list doesn't necessarily speak to, but it at least gives you a starting place of letting you know kind of what those equivalencies are. And then once you are a veteran and you're at CTA, we have a great resource group, a veteran employee resource group that really helps our veterans. You know, they provide networking, they connect them to different initiatives, they really advocate for them if there's an issue that some of our veterans are having. They kind of work as a group that make sure our veterans are being given the information that they need and that they are being encouraged and built up while they're here at CTA.
Awesome. Thank you for that response, Lindsay. And another good question here. This individual asks, I worked for CTA, but had to leave due to being a caregiver for someone with COVID. They are better now. What would the process be to be able to come back? So I think we can kind of translate that into a more generalized question again, Lindsay. If folks have to leave employment with CTA for any sort of reason, what is the process for getting rehired or being brought back onto CTA? Are there any sort of prohibitions or anything like that in place that folks need to be aware of?
That's really specific to the manner in which they left CTA. The best thing that they could do is call our leave management office, and yeah, because they would be able to tell you, you know, you can come back in this capacity or you would have to reapply. They're going to be the final say on that, so I can't really, even if I did know the specifics of the case, I couldn't respond to it. So calling leave management, they would be able to let you know what next steps could happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you for hanging in there with me. I know we had a ton of questions today. I will go ahead and ask you one final question here, and then we'll give you an opportunity to wrap up. This individual asks, are there any entry-level positions in technology? Not certified, but I do have years of experience. I don't know if that's something you could generally answer.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that there are any open positions right now within the technology team. I'm looking at the website right now. I don't see anything that's necessarily open, but that doesn't mean that things don't pop up. So there are entry-level jobs in a lot of different departments across the CTA. Again, the best thing I would recommend for you to do is to go on our website, create a profile, and then indicate that you're interested in information technology jobs, and that would send you the listings for anything that that becomes available there, and then you could assess whether that's a good fit for you to apply to.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And one final question that we do have here, I'm going to go ahead and again kind of generalize the question. If somebody is interested in becoming a bus driver and they do not necessarily have the classification of license that they need in order to do so, do you guys provide any sort of assistance for folks that might need to get that Class B license, let's say, to become a bus driver? I believe you might have covered that, but again, we'll want to make sure to get that answered if at all possible.
Yeah, that's a question that is worth repeating for sure, because it is a question that a lot of people have when they're interested in our bus operator position. So you can come in with a Class B CDL, or if you've got a Class A and you would need the three endorsements. So general knowledge, passenger, and air brakes. If you don't have those endorsements, or you don't have the Class B, then we would help you with additional training that you need to get those endorsements or get that CDL if that's what you need. So again, you don't have to have a CDL to apply to CTA. You can apply without it, get pretty much all the way through the process, but then you have to have at least your commercial learner's permit before starting the job. So it is something we help you get if you need it, but if you've got a little bit of it or you've got all of it on the front end, that's just going to be a little less training that we give you because you've already got those basic steps when you actually would come on to CTA property and start your job.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Lindsay. I think we'll begin kind of the wrap up here of today's session. Is there anything else, Lindsay, that you'd like to include that perhaps might have been omitted, or just something that you would like to emphasize for the folks that are still on the call regarding today's session?
I think we've been really thorough. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited that we had such great attendance today. Thank you so much to YWCA and the TDL Sector Center for having us. I'm excited to additional future partnership with you all. And if anybody does have questions, about the specific jobs that we offer, the best place to go again is just our careers page. That is where you can learn about those individual jobs. You can see the posting expiration date. You can see the salary and get a lot of information there as well. The last piece of advice I would give also is to Apply to a job early. Some of our positions that we post for are mass hire positions. So customer service assistant, bus operator. So the best way for you to be considered for those jobs is to apply early to them. If we have a quota of, I'm going to pull this number out of the air. This is not a number that is official in any way, but if we say, hey, we need to hire 50 CSAs, and we have 500 applications for CSAs come in, we're probably not going to have to get to all 500 people. We're probably not going to review all 500 resumes or applications before we find 50 that we can hire. So if you're in the first 100 or 200, you'll probably get a look. If you're in the last 400, you might not. So we do review applications in the order that they are submitted. So always submitting an application early is going to work in your best interest.
Awesome. Thank you for all of the wonderful knowledge that you covered here today, Lindsay. And thank you to all the job seekers who are on the call as well. Again, I do want to make note that we have recorded this session. It will be uploaded to the Illinois WorkNet YouTube channel later today. So if you need to come back to reference anything that was covered here today, please feel free to do so. We will also be linking that video to CTA's employer booth on Illinois WorkNet as well, so you can also reference this video at that location. Again, if you do have any questions regarding employment with CTA, please reach out to that link that you see there on the screen, ctacareers@transitchicago.com. And as Lindsay stated, if you do want to review any sort of positions that CTA does have available, please visit transitchicago.com/careers, and you can review all of the positions that are available there. Lindsay, again, thank you so much for your presentation today. Again, thank you to all who attended. Hope you have a wonderful day and a great weekend. Want to make one more note. Again, YWCA TDL Sector Center will be reaching out to all the folks who registered for the event, regarding application questions, follow-up, so on and so forth. So please be sure to monitor your email inboxes, be close to your phone. Those folks will be reaching out to you. So thank you all very much. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.